Apparently we're getting another woke pope.
Yes, the previous super chat mentioned the Catholic Church. This is a big day for Catholics. I'm a Protestant, but I'm happy to bring you the news of our brothers from Rome.
I'm an atheist, but I'm also a Protestant.
Yes. Classic Anglican atheist.
Yes.
And they are going to elect their next pope. So, Pope Francis, let's ask the panel, what were your thoughts on Pope Francis?
They really went downhill when he decided he was just going to kiss some Muslims' feet for no reason.
That was one thing, yeah. Do you remember anything about his reputation, what he got up to?
Well, the American, I'm speaking as the American, but the American perspective was that he was very liberal. And that's, I'm being very generous when I say liberal. In some ways, there are things that I appreciate about him, as far as he did seem like trying to be like a man of the people. But then there are moments where it seemed like he was going a little bit too far, where he was, especially when it comes to, I think if I remember correctly, he had some kind of controversial things as far as like abortion and
not very Catholic,
and gay marriage and things.
Not
like that.
very Catholic.
Not very. Yes. So there are things that are like, if you told me the Pope said he's against gay marriage, I would have been like, yeah, that's about,
should be, yeah.
Every Pope would say that. But he was someone who stood out that was different in regards to that.
Yeah, he's a communist.
Right. Very light on sin. I think that's the
typical Catholics.
Right.
Yeah.
It was something that was very obvious to me, that he was very light on calling things what they are. And I say this as far as being a Christian. Obviously, you give people grace, and you're supposed to hate the sin, not the sinner.
Agreed. Yeah.
So completely understand that. But there's a point where you're supposed to call out the sin.
Yes.
Pope, you meant to.
So
and Jesus was known for spending time with the prostitutes and the sinners, but only if they were repentant. These were people who were turning their lives around, and we have to remember both halves. Anyway, so
just a quick thing though. I think that the I mean, I'm not, like I said, I'm not Catholic, but I really hate it when things are inauthentic. Right? I want Catholics to be Catholic. I want Protestants to be atheists. I want.
Whoa!
sorry, I'm just joking. I want the thing to be the thing that it claims to be, and actually embody it essentially as well as aesthetically. And for me, the thing that really annoyed me about Francis was when he was like, "Oh no, any religion is a path to heaven." All religions are a path to heaven. It's like,
which is mind-boggling.
You can't say that. That's open heresy.
Right.
That is just open heresy. And like I said, I'm not a Catholic, but I don't want you to be a heretic pope and lie, because it can't be true. It can't be that every religion is a path to God, or else why are you a Catholic?
Right.
Be something else. Don't be anything. You just be like, well, none of it matters. Actually, just throw this all away. Bollocks. It can't be true.
Right. There are truth claims made by every religion.
Yes.
And so they cannot all be true at the same time.
They are all directly contradictory.
So if you are the Pope, someone who is supposed to be a Christian, you're making a truth claim about Christ.
Yes.
And that is antithetical to everything else that other religions are saying, especially if we were to pick one, Islam. Islam is antithetical to Christianity.
Or Judaism, which also denies Christ. Or paganism, which denies Christ. I mean, like, every religion is... they're mutually exclusive. You can't just say, they're all okay.
No, they're all basically the same, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
that's what an atheist would say. Right. It's all basically the same.
You have to figure out what Jesus was meaning when he said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but through me."
Yeah,
He's not saying, "I am a way, a truth, a life. Come to the Father, all different directions." I'm just one route.
And maybe
that's not what he said.
Zeus is just as good as worshipping me. Whatever.
Yeah. Right. So let me explain for people who don't know what's going on. They're about to hold the conclave, which is when...
Sounds mystical.
Yes, conclave, it basically means with key. They're going to lock themselves in a room, a bunch of cardinals, and have a series of votes until eventually they reach 2/3 agreement.
Has it always been done this way?
No, they had various different rules. It's essentially, one time it took them 3 years to elect a pope. And they said, okay, we need a system.
That's how democracy started.
Yes. So I think it was Gregory X who came up with the current set of rules. And,
in fact, it says in 1274.
Oh, there we go.
Right, there we go. Yeah.
Good. I'm glad when the internet agrees with me. It rarely happens. So they're going to... I think the last couple of times it's only taken 2 days, in fact, for them to vote.
They can count the votes faster than Caliban.
But interestingly, of the 135 cardinals who will be voting this year, 108 of them were directly appointed by Pope Francis. So,
I see where this
the chances of the next pope being a great departure from the very progressive, liberalizing, as we've been discussing, the chances of the next pope being completely in the opposite direction is quite low.
I've seen that there have been a bunch of based African popes who are like, actually, we are Catholics.
Yeah, no, I had to fact check this to see if it was true. I believe one of the potential new popes from Africa, his name is actually Ambongo.
Hey, look, I'm not against them having.
So he's the one we should all be hoping for.
Yeah. Because he's probably the one who's like, yeah, no, we're definitely against.
Yeah. Well, did you see the Conclave movie? This was one of the themes in that was that the liberals are really stressing because there's one of the front runners is an African pope, and they're all like, it would be great to have a black pope, but then they're also like, but he's also very, very conservative.
Yeah.
So yes, I mean, that was another part of Francis's agenda while he was pope, was to expand the Catholic Church around the world. It was massively Eurocentric, and most of the people who have been added as cardinals
Church of Rome
are from Africa or Asia. So there's a fair chance that we will get the first non-white pope. But frankly, I'm less concerned about that as I am about the opinions that the guy will hold.
I want a based African pope going, why are you gay?
There's one of them who's slightly on the more conservative end, whose name is something like Pastoral or something. He's Italian,
right.
So he's my other shoe-in. If he gets it, I'm
right.
Pasta balls.
I can't remember what the exact name was, but So there's a good chance that it'll be Zuppi, I think, who was the peace envoy to Ukraine. There's a guy. I'm sorry. I'm trying to.
You're not reading. Do you want to go down?
Yes, if we could scroll down a little bit on my notes. There he is, Pizza Balla, Piero Battista Pizza Balla, who is
that is actually his name, Pizza Ball,
who is the Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem, and he visited Gaza during the recent.
His Holiness Pizza Ball.
Apparently, one of the things that happens is that you often alternate between a pope who is more pastoral and then a pope who is more kind of diplomatic.
Oh, right.
And Francis is considered to have been a pastoral pope.
What do we mean when we say pastoral exactly?
Well, rather than putting a lot of attention on giving a Catholic opinion on conflicts around the world and telling people what they should be doing, he's giving more soft advice about...
Woke advice.
Well, so you could argue, if it's going to be this TikTok, that the next guy might be a little bit more strict on doctrine.
There's an
that would be
Erdo.
a good outcome. Peter Erdo is another possibility. He's probably the most right-wing, as in conservative, realistic one. He's connected to Hungary. I think he's endorsed, is it
Orban?
Orban, yeah. So maybe he's secretly the one that we should all be hoping for.
Well, I mean, look what it says here. He's famously been a more conservative voice within the church. And I love this, though. Having opposed the practice of divorce. I mean, that is one of the major schisms historically, right?
Yeah.
Like, remarried Catholics receiving Holy Communion. And he also compared the act of taking in refugees to human trafficking.
There's been a bunch of media.
Sounds great.
Yeah, I was going to say a lot of the media around the Pope recently. There was that Two Popes movie. There was the Young Pope TV series. Are often portraying these different papal figures, where you have one who's clearly portrayed as the good guy, stroking cats and being nice to people, and he's talking about how the church needs to liberalize and allow women bishops and so on. And then you have the guy who's stomping around slapping people and saying we need to go back and bring back the the Latin Mass, things like that.
I vote for that guy.
So we will see, but if I was a betting man, I think we're seeing a woke pope.
It's going to be someone like this guy, right? Liberal.
Yeah, I mean, Pope Francis had an inner circle, and often it's a surprise, the guy who comes out as the Pope, like I don't think Francis was on most people's bingo cards last time there was a conclave. So there's a saying.
Past Pizza Bala.
Yeah, I know. I know.
There you go, Pizza Bala.
Yeah. His name is
Pizza Bala versus Bongo. This is essentially what's happening here.
Where are the African ones? I want some of their statements.
So we'll see. There's a saying: if you go into a conclave pope, you will come out as a cardinal. The cardinals are just fairly senior rank.
Out of Africa, says the Independent. That's a weird way of framing it. Cardinal Peter Turkson, conservative, love it.
So I mean, expanding to the world, it's a bit like our first topic, that if you bring in people from around the world, they will probably actually be more conservative than the liberals, the white liberals.
Against the use of condoms despite the AIDS pandemic in Africa.
Yeah, so it's the same thing. If you've one of Francis's things was he added a lot of cardinals to Africa, but of course the African cardinals tend to be fairly conservative, but fairly based. So it's kind of two-edged sword.
I'm not a Catholic or anything like that, but I don't know why, but something bothers me about how they're ranking things like conservative, liberal, and things like that. But none of this is about Christ.
Yeah, like I should say the ranking of the potential candidates from liberal to conservative is not something that Catholics themselves generally talk in terms of. It's more of a perception people from the outside put onto what's going on, and
that's fair.
I should say in defense of Catholics, who I don't think we have represented in this conversation. When I've spoken to them, their prayers for the next pontiff is that they're somebody who loves Jesus and who is humble and will
call the 10th Crusade. That's the Catholics I know.
That's what I'm reading.
The Catholics I know are calling for that.
So I
mean, look at this guy though. Like Cardinal Sarah is traditionalist and conservative, but I love the way the Independent are framing this. One of his strengths is that he has a deeper understanding and respect for Islam. It's like you're the Catholic. Like, I mean,
traditionalist and conservative and
loves Muslims, but he's against anti-LGBT. So I guess there's that. Just like
it's funny how the media can't decide when they're talking about the Catholics if they are an organization on the precipice of liberalizing into atheism, or if they are the arch conservatives and they're doing all of this child abuse. It's depending on what the recent news story is, it goes one way or the other.
I don't think the surname Marx is good. You don't want to left it.
Was there a Marx? I didn't even.
Yeah, scroll up a bit.
Oh yeah, Cardinal Marx.
Dun dun dun.
He's a little what shock.
So I think we should pray for this that's happening, even though I'm not a Catholic. I think it would be great if the person chosen
was a Catholic.
Yeah, is a
like
real
the last
representative of God rather than a kind of self-aggrandizing liberal.
Just a quick thing. As a Protestant, what could the Catholics do to win you over?
Oh, to win me over? Well, I had an interesting conversation with someone recently who was a Catholic, who said that part of the ethos of Catholicism is about tradition. And because I was not brought up in a Catholic tradition, he said that would be the least Catholic thing for you to do, to switch. Now, there are specific theological claims that are made by the Catholic Church that I differ on. So realistically, they would have to convince me on those fundamental arguments.
We won't get into them now.
I don't think we have time, but I certainly. So one of the things I've talked to lots of Christians over the last few years online, and we've got a little community, people from all different denominations, and I've made it quite an effort to be cross-denominational and not to get dragged into lots of fighting.
I feel more the meme of like we're more similar than we first thought, right?
Yeah.
Is playing out.
Yeah, but one of the things people from all the different denominations talk about is how they struggle in their church with how woke things have become, and it's kind of because sometimes Catholics will go to Protestants and point at their churches which are covered in the rainbow flags,
as if the Catholics don't have that too.
But then you go, well, yeah, okay, but what has your Pope been saying?
Yeah.
So actually I think we need to ban together as based Christians and in solidarity and say, actually, we are part of the body of Christ, and we're not defined by the most extreme liberal presentation of Christianity that exists.
I have a question for you, because I'm not particularly familiar with it, and especially because you also asked us what we think about the previous Pope.
Yeah.
He had I think there was a notion going around that he was very much pro mass migration, but I have heard lots of Catholics saying that he has been misrepresented on this. Do you think he was misrepresented or not?
I think a bit of both.
Okay.
He has
what
been,
way?
His statements have been taken out of context a bit and blown out of proportion.
That's good to hear.
On the other hand,
how were they taken out of context?
What
did he say?
I can't tell you in that specific instance.
Okay.
Sorry, I'd have to go and research exactly what he said. I don't want to perpetuate the misrepresentations. The other thing I was going to mention is that for Christians who are based and want to find a based community, I'm running a weekend retreat.
Oh, really?
It will only be for the based. I don't want to say only for Christians, but a lot of the content at it.
I imagine
Christian.
it's going to be.
If
Pope Francis probably isn't going to want to go.
Can I give you a couple of quick details about it? So
ahead.
it's on the 11th to the 13th of July. It's in Norfolk in the UK, and I've done it for a few years. If you're interested in coming along, then you should email me at lambda.retreats@gmail.com. And I tell you, it's such a relief to be around people who have that rare combination of being serious about their faith, whether or not they feel that they've reached there or not, and serious in terms of finding truth about broader society. Because so often you go to a church and you're like, the person preaching from the front is just reciting the woke agenda at me.
Unfortunately, occasionally I have to go to churches because family functions and stuff. And the local church that my wife's sort of family church they go to, it's run by a very nice woman, but she's woke, and I have to sit through it.
The funny thing is, often the pastors aren't actually as woke as they portray, and their perception is that they can reach out to people by saying, well, look, Jesus lines up with your existing woke opinions in these ways. If I kind of blur it and stretch it,
I just don't want that when I go to a church.
No,
I want to be told that I'm a sinner.
Half the people in the congregation have been sitting there quietly thinking, well, I don't like woke, and if you're telling me that Jesus is woke, then I'm about twice, because he's also going to ask me to do a bunch of other things.
But like they'll do like modern things as well, like rework the lyrics of a modern pop song to be like praising Jesus, and it's just like, give me the Gregorian chants, man. Give me like something classic. Give me a bit of fire and thunder. Tell me what right from wrong is, and make me think that there might be something transcendent rather than like some sort of Tony Blairized version of the church. I hate it.
Well, I was going to say the fundamental issue with, you were saying like a pastor or a priest trying to bring someone in who's maybe more left. The problem is that it goes against the core thing about love. Love includes being truthful, right? And so if you have to lie to people, right, you say, I'm bending it, but it's not true. Right. So if you have to bend the truth, it's a lie. It's falsehood. That's not love. That's not based on love.
Right.
So if you have to bend the truth, aka lie to people, to bring people towards Christ, then this isn't the way forward. Right. So that's partly my issue with that particular strategy. I think our culture is daft of truth. They're having people who think that being honest with someone is hurtful, because they've grown up in a culture where being honest with someone is something that is rare. And so everyone just sugarcoats things, like you mentioned before, like being very feminized, like in the schools. It's a very feminized culture where they're worried about social dynamics. And sometimes you need to be truthful. You need to be honest. And so there needs to be that mix of masculine energy in our society. And so for the church or Christians in general to adhere to the more feminized approach, where you're worried about losing people. I'm tired of that as well, because let me tell you, I'll say this, as a man who grew up without his father and growing up with his mother and sister, and learning that I'm also adhering to that. And when I started adhering to being truthful, like I'm 100% honest with my wife. I'm 100% honest with my son, and they respect me for that. There is so much respect in truth, even if they don't agree with you, but you're at least being honest with them. rather than lying so you can try to sort of please them, and no one respects that at the end of the day. We want people to respect Christ as well as love him, and you can't love Christ without truth. So that's my fundamental issue.
I think that's a great point. And another thing that bothers me as well is it's ceding the morality to leftism.
Right.
It's saying, leftism is actually the correct morality, and I'm just going to try and squeeze Jesus into this thing. It's like, no, I want some sort of Cromwellian preacher to tell me what right from wrong is and how everyone else is wrong, and he's the guy who's right. And by God, there's going to be hell to pay.
I think you're totally right. People are not coming to churches saying, I have an existing morality and I want somebody to tell me the root of it.
Yeah.
They're saying, I'm confused. Morality is this shifting sand under my feet. I don't agree with half the things, and
Weirdly,
I
we
can't
have a
figure
book
out
for
why. I want somebody to tell me there is a morality, and I will listen to them when they tell me what it is, even if it's different from what I currently believe.
Yeah, I totally agree.
It's weird because if you don't think that there is a morality yourself, just someone else telling you that there isn't going to help.
No, but most people think there is a morality, and when other people tell them that it's all relative, they go, no, it's not. So if somebody comes along and at least opens the conversation with, I believe there is an objective morality, and I can tell you why I believe it and where it comes from. Now, you have that conversation and maybe you don't convince them, but at least that should be an attractive starting point. People are dying to be told there is right, there is wrong. If I see evil, it's evil. It's not just some adaptive thing that evolution or societal change and culture has labeled as bad. It's genuinely wrong in a deep way. Where does that come from?
Yeah, I agree with you, but I think the problem mainly is inverted morality, because we have all sorts of moral fanatics at the world right now and for the last decades who weren't exactly moral relativists. They wanted their opposition to be morally relativistic, and they really hammered on a very fanatic vision of morality.
Yeah, we need the same on the right. So someone possibly in like 17th century.
I'm
not even joking. That's actually
not
what I want these days.
The 1517, 1648 period in Europe.
Maybe.
Maybe we shouldn't want to recreate that.
There was far fewer relative morality going around, But
morality going around slicing each other's throats.
Hey, man, you have to really believe in your morality, the objective morality to get to that point. But no, I'm with you. I think that there are a lot of young people who are actually just confused by what leftist morality is presented. Yeah. And actually, my experience with Christians has always been that they're actually people with a firm moral compass who do the right thing and know right from wrong. And even if I'm personally not a Christian, I still really appreciate what Christians believe and how they comport themselves in reality.
Yeah. Well, and you were the original inspiration for my weekend retreats.
I know. Good. Get the monasteries back together.
The classic Anglican
Cars,
way.
pictures.
It's been really meaningful to a lot of people.
Good.
So, I want to pass on their thanks for inspiring it in the first place.
Well, you can just do things, it turns out.
Yes.
It turns out you can actually just do stuff.
Yes.
People enjoy it.
Yes. Life is not on rails. It feels that way for a long time. And then you sort of realize, actually, I can do whatever I choose to do, and you should do the things that you think are meaningful and important, rather than the things that are just pleasure-inducing in the short term.
Yeah,
right?
I agree, and I do think that there's an element of making sure that the people who are trying to come to Christ are actually trying to come to Christ. There's I think you'll understand what I mean by this. There are people who are in love with Christianity, and there are people who are in love with Jesus. And they tend to be fundamentally two different people. One likes the structure, the rules. The Bible says, do this, that's why you should do this. Don't do this, don't do this. Whereas there's an element of missing out on the love of Christ, right? And it's a balance between the two. It's not one or the other. Just in the same way that people talk about the love of Christ, but then they get manipulated into saying, well, then he loves everything, including your sins. So you can be this way and that way. You're trans, you're gay. He loves everybody.
Pope Francis.
And it becomes that type of perversion. It's the balance between the two. But I do think there's an element of making sure that we love Christ first and use Christ as a human example of, like, he's the North Star of our conduct. Yeah. I think that's the beauty in Jesus Christ, is that for other religions, it is God, something that you cannot visually see. Whereas with Christians, you have God in human form. So you can mimic his behavior, or at least know if his conduct was like this, if his moral compass was like this as a person, that's the direction that we should go.
I want to add to what you said, because to contextualize what I said before, because I think I'm going to be misrepresented. I don't say that if people are morally objectivist and speak about objective morality, that this is going to recreate Europe.
Right.
15, 17, 16, 14.
You've lost me there, though. I mean,
but no. I want you to lose me. So I want you to lose me, because what I want to say is that there has to be a balance between the more emotional and sympathetic style approach and the more, let's say, morally steadfast approach.
I'm for the fire and brimstone.
Because if you have the latter without the former,
yes,
and you combine this with the idea that a side is going to enforce a totalistic doctrine on any dissenter, that's when you have when you have people slicing each other's throat. Right. Not when they're morally objectivist. So yes.
Yes. No, I think that's right. I rather than talking about a balance, which sounds like a compromise and neither thing is fully embraced, like Jesus, who was 100% in on love your neighbor as yourself, also said that I've not come to abolish the law but fulfill it. We've got that phrase like a jot or tittle. He's saying that comes from Jesus talking about he's not going to let even a jot or tittle of the law pass away, which was meaning like the little dots and punctuation marks on the Hebrew. So he's saying 100% people should be following goodness and law and should keep the commandments. But if you have not love, you have nothing, right?
If you would like to watch the full uncut version that is also uncensored, head on over to lotuseaters.com to find out more.